Welcome to Mastering Agility. If you want to listen to authentic conversations with the most inspiring guests, find like-minded people in the Mastering Agility Discord community, or both online and face-to-face events, this is the platform for you. Grab a drink, sit back, and join professional Scrum trainers Sander Dorr, Jim Sammons, and their guests in an all-new episode.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show, the Scan Agile edition in Helsinki. And yeah, we just checked, it's officially the afternoon of the conference. We've got a fantastic guest with us today, Laura Heikkurinen, joining us straight from OP Financial Group, where she's a lead transformation coach doing some seriously impactful work.
Yeah, and if you think leadership is just about managing people or tracking milestones, Laura's here to change your mind. She's passionate about creating inclusive, empowering workplaces where people can thrive, not just survive in the org chart.
And I love this part. She dropped this right at the start. There's only one word for leadership and management in Finnish. So right away, we got into the good stuff, how language shapes our thinking, how to spot real leadership, and what it takes to build future-ready teams.
Oh, and there's some solid truth bombs about killing off old school hierarchies, contextually, of course. And what makes a truly people-first transformation work? You don't want to miss this one.
Let's get into it.
Welcome back, everyone. Good morning. I think it is still morning. Oh, no, it's afternoon. So I'm sitting here with my co-host and Laura. Can you introduce yourself? Tell the audience who you are and why we're talking today.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Laura Heikkurinen. I work as an lead transformation coach at the moment in OP Financial Group. The thing that really is I'm passionate about is leadership. How we make sure that everyone is led in the way that they have the freedom to be the best versions of themselves in terms of how we create inclusive workplaces. And so topics around that are close to my heart.
Wow. So I feel like we have a similar role. I'm kind of in the same thing. And we had talked briefly before we hit record about leadership. So what's your definition of leadership? And as a follow-up, how's it different than management?
Oh, that's a great question. And I can even share the fact that in Finnish, which is my native language, there's only one word for both of those, which makes it very intriguing or interesting when you have these conversations. Because for me, these are definitely two different things. It's one thing to be leading the topics or the things we need to achieve and deliver, and one thing to really focus on the people. Because my personal take on this is that you get to the best business results when you focus on the people from the get-go, and you really make sure that they have everything they need to shine. And that would be the leadership part. Then management would just be focusing on, milestones, deliveries, resources, how many euros or dollars have we been using.
Sander, what do you think? How's her definition aligned with yours?
I would say for the majority.
Yeah.
But how far we're going to go into that is, I'm more curious right now about your definition of that too. Let's see how far we get, if we are all aligned.
Well, I mean, I think leadership is about where we're going and what our strategy is to get there. And that needs to be influenced by KPIs or information, data. And I do think management is really about tactical execution. It's about doing the things. And I think leadership is a higher order skill than that. So I normally talk about them as two very different things. Organizations might need both. I think some managers are leaders and some leaders are also managers. But to assume that the same skill set is in each person and that we need each of them equally, I think is the mistake.
Yeah, agreed. And I think just to kind of add to the definition, before I worked at OP, I worked for Accenture more than 20 years. So one of my takeaways from there is one of their core values called stewardship, which is about building the next generation of leaders. So to me, that's also kind of leaving whatever you're working with, leaving it to be something better than it was when you came there. So that to me is also an essence of leadership, that you're not there just to do a job, but you're kind of building something for the future as well.
Mm. Yep. One other thing, Sander, and then I want to hear from you, but I also think good leaders will naturally create more leaders, right? They'll embed leadership skills in other people. And a conversation I've had this week a couple of times with different people is kind of around succession planning. And, we see organizations flattening. I was just in a session with some Tesla leaders, and they talked about nearly 100% engineer-led. Nearly. It's funny. Like, does that mean 90% or 99.8? I don't know. But it's really about like, how can we, one of the other skills that we were talking about at the hotel last night is, how do you create a path for growth for people that doesn't mean you've got to become a middle manager or you've got to become a leader if you don't want to be? Like, can you show growth in people in a development plan and maybe more money, more autonomy, more whatever, without it just by default leading to being a manager?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought as well. And because I dream of a world where we don't have managers and like where we really wouldn't have hierarchies and where we really would be autonomous, as a working life. Of course, it is a dream and it will never fully get there. But I think it's also also to touch upon what you said about if you've had good leaders, then they will be good role models for you, and you will have something to kind of look up to or aspire to be. And then, unfortunately, the same goes also that if you had bad leaders, bad managers, you will most likely be repeating what they did. Because I think that's something that I at least see still a lot around me, and having been a consultant, having seen a lot of those other large companies in Finland as well, that if the higher up you go in the organization, you have people who perhaps come from a little bit different era, perhaps some more hierarchical leadership styles, and that still cascades within the organization. A new person comes to the firm and looks at them and thinks, oh, okay, so this is how I should behave. This is how I should be to be successful here, rather than, stay true to something that's really innate for them and try to change perhaps the culture with what they do.
How do you feel then about that old saying, there's no such thing as bad teams, there's only bad leaders?
I've sometimes come across bad teams too. So, however, a leader has still usually more power or organizationally, so they can create more challenges around them in that sense. I think typically if you have a bad team, and with that, when I meant bad team, maybe there are issues with the collaboration or ways how you communicate, and perhaps you've misunderstood what someone said, and it's a lot about the interpersonal skill set as well, and that's usually something one can work at, if there's a will for that.
That's where you need leaders as well to guide that process. In Scrum teams, there are Scrum Masters, and there are different roles and accountabilities and different frameworks. But those people are seen as leaders as well. And I think that is a definition that many organizations never talk about. Like, leaders are traditionally, at least as my experience, and I'm curious about yours, are seen as higher ups in the food chain. Let's stick to that. Leaders are not seen to be in teams.
Yes, they're not seen as being in the team, which I think is a problem. And there's a YouTube video I recommend to a lot of people called Lollipop Leadership from Drew Dudley. And it's just a short, it's like less than 10 minutes, but it's just a great reminder that every single person, regardless of their job title or where they are in some org hierarchy, has the ability to be a leader and to inspire others. And you don't know when you're going to make an impact on people. And a question for both of you is, do you feel that your good role models through your career have taught you more or less than the bad role models?
It's a great question. I'm going to pause that for a second because I want to share something that we do in real life at OP, because it has to do with your point about who are the leaders. So in 2019, I wasn't yet there, but that's when we started our enterprise agility program or change, whatever you want to call that. And one of the things that we did with that was also start changing the language, the narrative. How do we talk about leadership? So typically you say leadership roles and everyone thinks about C-level or, vice presidents and so forth. And we started to have a new word that we use that it's not quite the same in English, but I'll do. So we don't talk about leadership roles anymore. We talk about leader roles. And that includes everyone from the president of OP to the agile masters that are kind of the scrum masters that we have. So and the product owners and everyone. And we really, and this is something that's really close to my heart. And like we talk about how do we make leadership part of the everyday? It's not typically like to your job title or your pay grade. It's about, everything we do and how do we interact together. So just wanted to touch upon that before going into your...
That's a great... Yeah. Now, well, I'm going to let you answer the first question I asked before I interrupt. So I am going to come back. I'm just going to capture a note. So
go ahead.
Your comment made me think of something, but I want to hear from you all about... So who teaches you more? Who do you learn more from? The good role models or the bad?
Both.
More. Equal? Is it equal?
I'm not sure, actually. Because I've seen many bad leaders that taught me very well how not to do it. So I would say the most impactful learnings have come from bad experience.
Okay. I share that. Laura, what do you think?
I'm kind of on the same lines as you are, Sander, there. I think it's, as human beings, I think our brain is a little bit wired like that we more easily remember the bad stuff. And hence the bad experiences might be more impactful to us. I've personally taken this type of, I've decided at some point I will decide to learn something from every person I meet. And that has helped me in that terms that you don't have to be classifying it to good or bad in that sense, but kind of a look at and perhaps even look at it this way, like what is the one good thing I can pick from Sander or Jim, or what is it the good thing? Because we all have different traits. We all have different things we're good at, and nobody is perfect. Unless you think you're perfect, then this is now a bummer that I say that nobody's perfect. But I'm trusting you knew this before.
What's the most?
Sadly, I knew that.
I think you're pretty perfect.
Oh.
What's the biggest learning point that you've gotten from the conference so far?
I think if I have to pick one thing, it's from yesterday. From Evelyn was doing this thing where she asked us all to draw things while she was doing her presentation. And I think just to sort of how she demonstrated the topics she was talking about kind of made us all walk the talk, not just walk the talk herself. So that kind of gave me the idea, and the idea was about how neuroscience affects us. So how do we structure our meetings or trainings so that they are not perhaps more brain friendly, and maybe not just have 60-minute meetings for the sake of having 60-minute meetings. Not that you would ever encounter that, but sometimes I get to be invited to meetings that simply will take as many minutes as they say on the calendar, even though the topic had been covered in like the first 15 minutes.
Man. Yes, absolutely. And
both Jim and I are experienced consultants and trainers. Therefore, we know how important it is for organizations to have the fundamentals in place before delivering high-value products. And this starts with understanding the theory behind whatever framework, method, or process organizations apply. And this is where Zebia comes in. Zebia is a pioneering software engineering and IT consultancy company, transforming and executing at the intersection of domain and technology to create digital leaders for our people, clients, partners, and communities. As a gift for our Mastering Agility audience, they provided us with a discount code MA10 when signing up for their open enrollment classes to get 10% off. Go to zebia.com/academy to find the entire curriculum of courses. That is Zebia, XEBIA.com/academy to find all their courses.
It's a shame I missed Evelyn's workshop, but this guy basically shackled me to this table yesterday. But
yes.
Something that I wonder if this is kind of what you're mentioning is when a facilitator or a leader or speaker encourages you to write. Like a number of years ago, one of the proudest things that I've built in my career was inside of a large bank. We built a coaching academy, and it was a 14-week program, and it was amazing. I got to work with some of the best people in a massive org. And one of the things we decided to do, and I do think it was my idea, but it was a team idea, is when the people would come in, and each room would have probably 25, 30 people in it, and we would have all this stuff on the table, pipe cleaners, Lego, little toys, little things, and all that stuff. And we encourage people from day one of week one to play with things, but not at the expense of paying attention. That was always the caveat, right? Like, because it would be very easy to, like, I got some tiny little hands here, right? It would be very easy to get so into these tiny little rubber hands that you lose the message. I think, and I'm not a trained neuroscientist, I'm not a trained psychologist, but I think that we got more creative solutions out of those people because we were engaging their hands, their mind. And at the end of the week, you could walk by these tables and you could see these big structures. Some people did little 2-dimensional cat faces and fun things, but we were challenging them to not approach solving the current problems the same way they always have. Now, I think the scientists would probably agree that if you're engaging like the different sides of your brain, right? But is that what you were feeling when you were encouraged to doodle or draw or whatever?
Yeah, and perhaps also the fact that it probably now has a more like making those notes as pictures, and I chose pictures that were relevant to my experience, helps me anchor that better. But to your point of that example of having things on the table, what I like about that also, not just in terms of more creativity and sort of problem solving skills, perhaps coming from that, but also the inclusion of people who might be on a spectrum of neurodivergence. Because there are people who might be very uncomfortable with just having to sit here and having my hands here and not moving them along. And then if you're neurotypical yourself, you might think, okay, what is that fuss? Why is that person not able to do that? And so being more open to that and having different options available. So I like that idea from that perspective as well, that it makes it okay to fiddle something with your hands and not still be with the whatever we're working on.
Well, that's what I've always said is, like I have fidget things at home. I have this little, it's just a piece to one of these microphone stands. And I just sit there on a meeting and I screw it and unscrew it and I play with it. I flip it around and all that stuff. As long as that stuff doesn't distract you. And I don't think I'm naturally a super fidgeter, right? Like I can just zone in, lock in and do that. But I know a lot of people, like if their hands aren't moving or if they're not doing something, their brain wanders and they struggle, right?
Yeah.
And to come back and answer my own question, I think I agree with both of you, which is and I'm even going to actually give myself a little bit of a riff here on this, is it's not about being a bad leader or a good leader. It's the bad things that I've seen people do. Like one example is I saw a leader that I respected get up on stage at a town hall and just basically kill a transformation on accident. And he was not a bad person. He did not intend to do a bad thing, but I learned from that experience. So I learned from his mistake. And we say a lot about that's mentorship, right? When somebody else has done something and they're like, yo, don't do that. I've done that before. Don't do that. Here's what I did, why I did it, and why I would suggest you do something different. But I vehemently disagree with the phrase, people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. I have left organizations despite having a phenomenal manager or leader, because in many cases, that person is just as frustrated and just as ineffectual at changing our shared environment as I am. So I'm not going to say I've not left an organization because of a bad manager, but I don't agree that it's some sort of universal rule, right? Like, and if you just happen to have a great leader or manager, you're going to be able to ignore the organization. Right. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned when you sat down that you're a transformation coach. So how do you see that? Like, how do you hear that phrase, like, about leaving companies versus leaving managers? And how do you feel about your ability to influence an organization of any size as a whole?
Well, when you were talking about why people leave, I remember from my previous role, there was a training we had, and there was one of the slides I still remember said like 70%. Like your manager impacts 70% of your kind of job satisfaction in that sense. So whether that's a correct number or not, that's not the point here. But the idea that, of course, whoever is kind of your closest person you're reporting to, even though I don't really like the word reporting, but anyway, then they do have a lot of, they can change a lot how your life looks at the company, and perhaps that then impacts where you are. But it's also something, my personal way to navigate this is that perhaps I get a lot of positive feedback that I'm very brave. So I don't know whether that's because I don't stick with bad stuff. I'm like, this is not worth my time type of thing. And I don't have a mortgage at the moment, so I have more freedom to move if you like. So that helps a lot because when I still had a mortgage, there were times when I had to endure situations which were not necessarily that pleasant in that sense. But I think it's a question of if there's a general will that we want to really be a place where people feel like they can, deliver their best abilities and be happy with what they do, because then typically people do a better job, and then the client satisfaction is better and business runs better and all these beautiful things. So I think it's about also, I believe in enabling people, giving them the space and giving them the support that they need to be able to be more successful. However, I know that not every kind of a leader or manager or coach necessary yet is living in this reality, and some companies are still quite hierarchical and you don't necessarily have that leeway. But I just hope we would create, safe spaces where psychological safety is the kind of a normal state, and people would be brave enough to speak up their mind.
How does the process to get there work for you? Because I've seen so many organizations that kind of chuck that over the fence, like from one day to another. Now you're all empowered without guiding the process. So it feels like the people are not used to the empowerment or the autonomy and authority. So how do you guide that transition from, for instance, let's call it micromanagement, to a more empowered state?
Yes, that if I had a very clear answer to that, then I would probably not share it here on the podcast, but write books on it or something like that. But I'm still working on that. But if I kind of think back to the transformation that we've had at OP from quite, financial industry, quite, traditional and all of that, and wanting to go into this path, I think one of the things we could have done differently in this transition, we could have helped our leaders, all of those different leader roles, more in the beginning of the transformation, because we perhaps didn't think that, okay, if we now change the organization structure and we remove some of the middle management layers, you should have also helped the people who are left in the roles to kind of figure out how does this now work, because it just things don't usually happen by, miracle and on their own. So I think it's about, really, I think one of the good examples of that is what kind of conversation happened when COVID hit. If we remember, we all sat at home for quite a long time. And unfortunately, I heard quite a few comments sometimes that worked from some of the in leadership roles being like, see, I'm not comfortable with them being there at home. Like, what are they doing? Like, how can I be sure that they're actually working? And I'm like, 2020, are we really still having this conversation? So
it's so exhausting. Also, I wonder if these people also hold the hands of their kids until they're 65. At what point do you want to let go of your kids? And it's the same in organizations. You got to trust people. I've said this many times before. It's almost as if we treat people like adults, they will act like adults.
But let's be honest, some people do take advantage of that.
Yeah, sure.
Like someone in my network, not work network, just friend network, looked at me and said, "Why are you putting on pants? Why are you putting on shoes? Why are you taking a shower?" Yeah, Laura almost did a real coffee spit take on the podcast.
It's wrong time to drink coffee.
Yeah, sorry. Right? Yeah, you got it. Like, we can hit you with something like that at any moment.
It's the anomaly, right? But then you got to act when it happens and not be in default in distrust mode.
No, right. I get it. Like, we talk a lot about assume positive intent, but we can't. There's a reality that many bad apples will spoil it for everybody, right? And I used to get very upset with some of my colleagues who, I work with someone who said, we were talking about your kit at home, which is a UK term, right? Like your tech. And I said, well, I don't have to drive anymore during 2021. I'm saving a lot of money on other things that I used to have to spend money on. So I feel it's reasonable to buy myself a second monitor and a comfier chair.
Yeah.
And there was a large group of people that I work with that were like, they would act like a little toddler and be, if this company wants me to have 2 monitors, they should buy me one. If they want me to have this, they should give it to me. And I'm like, okay, I get it. But that attitude is going to spoil it for many people. And I'm not saying everyone's got to go out and drop 2,000 euros on their home office like I did. I did it because I wanted to do it and it was an investment. But it's more the attitude, right? And it's more the ability for that perception to become a reality and to take root. And then you have that leader or manager somewhere who's like, see, look, if that person's doing it, they're all doing it. And I've had a manager tell me like he sees people as cockroaches, meaning if you see one cockroach, then there's actually 10. So to his point is if you see one person gaming the system, there's probably 10.
Maybe. Hey, listen, this would be a topic in and by itself, but also you got to go back in a minute to go back and hosting the Scan Agile conference. And we don't want to have people leave without
no pitchforks at the door to get Laura back.
So we're going to go back to the chat GPT question of the day. That's what we end up with.
Okay.
And today is, how do you know when to push forward with a product idea versus when to pivot or kill it? Now, given that this conversation has been about leadership, let's change that slightly to leadership. How do you know when to push forward with a certain change in the organization and when to kill it?
The product one would have been slightly easier to answer because that's more tangible in that sense.
Then answer that. Be my guest.
And to that, the funny thing is, the environment I work at, I wish we killed more. What a nice quote when you take that out of the context.
Let's go back to the cockroaches. I wish we killed more cockroaches.
Yes. Right.
But I think it's also like the hard thing with change when it impacts people, when leadership-driven changes typically do that, is that none of us really like change. So from that perspective, it's harder to kind of say, is this a good time to do things or is this not a good time to do things? But I think I would probably, when we talk about leadership, I would make sure that whatever organizational changes we're thinking of, there would be enough homework done early enough. And if the legislation says that it's okay, kind of include people in the process as early as possible. Sometimes, at least here, the labor laws kind of make it impossible to take people on before it's an official announcement that we're changing the organization and there might be some reductions or things like that. So you can't, ideally, I would like to have people on board from the beginning to, have them be part of the solution rather than just be cockroaches waiting to be killed.
Yes.
What a quote to end.
What a quote.
Any last remarks?
I just want to thank you for coming on, Laura. I know that you were like, oh, what could I possibly talk about? And me, little old me. And look, you like, we could do another hour. We could do another hour easily, I bet. So thank you so much for being on.
Thank you. This was so cool. Thank you for the experience.
And thank you for being on, and good luck hosting the rest of the conference.
Thank you.
Bye.
That is all for today. Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, let us know by hitting that like button. Share it with friends and colleagues, sharing a message on LinkedIn, joining our warm and welcoming Discord community, or attend recordings as a virtual audience. You can find all the relevant links in the show notes. We hope you'll tune back in for the next episode of the Mastering Agility podcast.